Very good evening to all the participants. So today, as all of you are aware that you're going to have a session by Professor I.B. Rao, who's going to address all of us from Ahmedabad. So before that, I'd like to give a brief introduction about our institution. This is a Chetan Business School, an initiation of Devapanur Korvi Siddhal Education Trust, and this institution has started its operation by taking approval of AICTE and affiliation to Karnataka University Dharwad, and approval by the Karnataka state government in the year 2011. Since then, the institution is always looking ahead of a kind of achieving a milestones in the field of academics. So accordingly, we have at the initial stage Professor A.B. Kalkundrekar, who is the former director of IMER Belgaum and also former principal of Gokte College of Commerce Belgaum, was a supporting pillar behind this institution. And later on, Professor A.H. Chachdi, former dean and director from KIMS KUD, has taken up as a mentor of this institution as well as a professor emeritus. Till today, he is there with us and supporting us in all the works of the institution. And at present, out of the 12 faculties, 8 or 9 faculties are PhD holders and 3 of them are under progress of completion of their research and PhD work. And in the year 2016, the institution bagged 2 ranks to the Karnataka University. That is first rank with 4 gold medals by one of our students called Melita Simos, and the second rank by Poonam Patel. So that way, both the ranks were backed by the institution. And in the recent survey conducted by GHRDC, CSR, All India, we got a 4th rank as a promising B school. And when sudden of all, in the month of March, thus due to COVID-19, when Prime Minister declared the lockout to the whole country, and just before 1 week about that, where the faculties were allowed to come to the institution, where students have to, not allowed, students were not allowed. And during that time, we at the institution started, taking the, online classes for our students. We were not waiting for the AICTE or UGC or any other, guidelines for conducting the online classes. This is how that we began to engage the online classes for the students, and by that time, all our faculties got trained. Immediately when there was a complete lockdown, not even faculties and staff are allowed to come to the institution, then all my faculties started engaging the classes from their home. So that way till today, so we are continuously engaging the classes for our students, and there is no any interruption as far as academic delivery concerned in our institution. And meantime, so when this thought of inviting the eminent personalities to conduct a lot of online sessions to enhance the knowledge of the people around us, to create an opportunity for the people to participate in this kind of online activities, then the first and foremost person, Mr. Deepak Shetty, who is the retired IAS officer and who served as a secretary to the government of India, so who has been invited to address the session on 9th of April. On that day, he addressed on the topic crisis management, how the government machinery work in such a situation, COVID-19. And we also requested Professor Pradeep Khandwala. So he has addressed, former director of IIM Ahmedabad, on 12th April. He came on the same technology, and he addressed on managing civilizational excellence. And on 21st April, we had one more session by Dr. Anand and Dr. Aditya Pandurangi, who are the practicing psychologists, psychiatrists, and they spoke on the topic implication of lockdown on mental health of students and role of parents at such a situation. And on 23rd of April, 4th session that we had from Professor Mukund Dikshit, who is a former professor from IIM Ahmedabad. So he spoke on a case teaching during COVID times and beyond. So this was also one of the mind-blowing sessions for all the participants and professors of this part of the state and also country. And on 2nd May, we had one more session as a 5th session by CA, Chartered Accountant Natraj Murshidin, who is a Chartered Accountant trainer and motivator. He spoke on the topic, nurture the future. So in fact, many people were finding the future blank at this point in time, and he addressed the parents and also students on this particular issue. Today we have with us an eminent personality, Professor I.V. Rao, Chairman TVRLS, former Professor IMA, so who has agreed to speak on the topic Sapling to Forest, Journey of HR in India, which is one of the very interesting topic. As all of you are aware, the contribution of Professor Rao in the field of the HR, where as we have seen earlier days, we used to call it as a personal department, but Professor Rao is instrumental for giving a new dimension to this area, where it is being named as a HR, human resource development. It's not a management, but it is a development of the human resource, and this is going to be a continuous development. And that way, together we have to work for the continuous development of the human resource available in the industry and the organization. That way, altogether, a new dimension is being given to the human resources. So this way, today, even for this particular session, we have many professors from the IIM Ahmedabad. So that is Professor T.V. Rao, he himself, Professor Jain, Professor Mukund Dikshit, and we have Professor S.V.N. Rao participating from Pondicherry. So like that, Professor C.C. Dikshit. We have our own Professor Emeritus, Dr. A. Chachadi. We have Director Academics of our institution, Dr. Ramakant Kulkarni, Dr. M.B. Hooley, who is instrumental of organizing this particular session because of his personal contacts with eminent personalities at IIM Ahmedabad. Like that, we have many people, many directors of the institution, different institutions, and we have a principal of our institution, Dr. A.R. Vadakandavar, and also we have Dr. R.R. Kulkarni, the director of KIMS KUD. Like that, many more professors that we have around us, and where the people, many industrialists are there, chartered accountants have joined us, many HR practitioners are there with us. So like that, today it's a mixture of the variety of people for this particular session. So on behalf of the institution, on behalf of the management, and on my own behalf, I'd like to extend a warm welcome to Professor T.V. Rao. So welcome to you, sir, for this particular session.
Thank you.
So likewise, I would like to welcome all the participants for this particular occasion. And we are looking forward for many more such occasions in the days to come. So on behalf of the institution and on my own behalf, I'd like to extend a warm welcome to each one of you for this particular session. Let's have a wonderful brainstorming session in this particular evening. So once again, I'd like to wish you all a wonderful evening and have a wonderful session ahead. So now I request my senior colleague, Dr. M.B. Hooley, to introduce Professor T.V. Rao. Now it's over to Professor Hooley.
It's okay. A very good evening to distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It is indeed a privilege to introduce Dr. T.V. Rao, whom I know him since the days of IIMA. It is unfortunate that Professor Uday Parikh passed away in 2010. Both Professors Uday Parikh and Professor T.V. Rao made a formidable team. During my student days in 1980s at IIMA, we used to often hear the name of Dr. T.V. Rao, and also I remember in those days I used to have his book, Doctors in the Making. I had met him a few times when Professor Uday Parikh used to ask me to interact with different faculties regarding my doctoral work. Recollecting memories at IIMA, Dr. T.V. Rao was one of the respected faculty and a well-known HR person in the country. In this session, he will take us into the long and arduous task of HR in the country and how they visioned and developed the discipline of HRD. No wonder Dr. T.V. Rao, along with Professor Uday Parikh, are called the fathers of HRD in India. T.V. Rao's achievement makes us proud. He has received accolades in and outside the country. Recently, he was awarded the Lifetime Achievement Award for HR Excellence from Business World in 2020. Above all, he is a great human being. So with this brief introduction, now I request Dr. T.V. Rao to address the session. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Huli. Very nice of you. Very kind of you to have. I didn't remember that you read my first book, Doctors in Making. That
Yes.
was just the other day. I was talking about comparing the HR profession with the medical profession. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Audible? Okay. Okay. You have to tell me if I am.
I request all the participants, please go on mute. And if you have any questions, we have a question and answer session at last. You all can go in, and if you have any questions, you can even chat also. And if you have any feedback to be given about the session, you can give your feedback in the chat. I kindly request all the participants to go on mute. Right? So now, about 117 people have already logged in, and we're going to start with the session. And now, another few more people yet to join this particular program. So let us hope for some wonderful program today's evening. So now I request Professor T.V. Rao to take over the session. Sir, please.
Thank you very much. Once again, I want to thank Dr. Huli for his kind remembrance of his early years at IIM Ahmedabad, and he's reading the book Doctors in Making, which was based on my PhD dissertation. Jocularly, I say this was about how medical colleges spoil medical students. This is about professional socialization of medical students. I studied some 7 medical colleges and so on. Now back to this theme, when Dr. Huli requested me to take a session, I said that, look, I have been in the recent past giving a lot of webinars. Tell me what is the topic that you want me to talk about. He said, why not share with us the journey of HRD? And I quickly suggested this title because this title was actually a title with which both Dr. Uday Parikh and I have written an article in HRD International. The title was From Sapling to a Forest. Of course, I added to this the journey of HR in India. Addressing a group like you, which is filled with a lot of academics and some practitioners, I was debating whether I should simply talk of the history, the way HRD got evolved, or I should get into concepts, or I should get into the literature that we have been able to produce in the last 45 odd years. I think since you have mentioned Dr. Uday Parikh, Uday and I have written jointly about 15 books in the last, I think till the time of his death. He retired from IIM Ahmedabad in 1985. He died in 2010. So 25 years after he retired, we were still actively collaborating, sharing ideas and writing. And quite often people say this is a very unusual pair of behavioral scientists who have worked together all through their lives. I think that is certainly true. I wish Uday lived a little longer. If he lived longer, I think by now he would have been 95. Going back to the history of HR, I would like to trace a little in terms of what the situation was. The title, Human Resource Development, this term, in my view, was conceptualized by Dr. Parikh and me, sitting in Taj Mahal Hotel in Bombay in the year 1974, 1975. I may not remember the exact date because those days we never thought it was going to create a history. We were only completing a consulting project that was given to IIM Ahmedabad for Dr. Parikh by Larsen and Toubro to examine the performance appraisal system. When we examined it, then we came up with an idea that the personnel department, which was handling the performance appraisal system at that point of time, is not likely to have the capability of implementing a system we conceptualized. Now, what the system is about, I will talk in a short while from now. But let me give you up to 1975, mid-70s, what was the situation? There was no term like HR known anywhere in the country. It was only personnel department, personnel managers, and best I think we had deputy general manager personnel, and maybe in some progressive companies they may have had general manager personnel. Otherwise, the term general manager is left for normally for line managers, production managers, and other kind of people who mattered a lot in organizations. So the term personnel management was known, but before that, I must also say that if you go back to what is today known as HRD, today's HRD derives from various disciplines. You find if there are about 500,000 HR professionals in our country, this is my estimate, but all the professional bodies we have today, which includes the National HRD Network, which I conceptualized and then also started it, the National Institute of Personnel Management, which began sometime in the year 1950 as Central Institute of Personnel Management from Calcutta, and also as Central Labor Institute of Labor Studies, etc. from Bombay. They were combined and formed into National Institute of Personnel Management in 1980. So if you go back to their own history, they were known as labor welfare departments. In fact, a large number of organizations, a good number of them textile mills, they had welfare officer, normally called as labor welfare officer, and there was no personnel department because large number of textile mills had workmen, and then their welfare need to be taken care of, their health need to be taken care of because of the kind of conditions in which they work, their residence, etc., etc. So prior to 1975, you had two streams. One stream is personnel management. Another stream is industrial relations or labor welfare. These were the two streams. So the labor welfare and industrial relations, for this, normally people were prepared by masters in social work, the schools of social work. I'm sure some of you know the first school of social work was initiated in India, which is now known as the Tata Institute of Social Sciences. But in those days, I think it was Dorabji Tata Graduate School of Social Work or something like that. That was, I think, started, if I recollect, sometime in the year 1938 or so. Later on, I think between 50 and 1960, there were other schools of social work. 1938 was XLRI. Actually, XLRI started formally a degree program in 1953, postgraduate degree in labor relations, and it was christened as Xavier Labor Relations Institute in 1953. So between, I think, post-independence, if you look at up to 1974, there were only two streams which have much later merged into HR. So I don't call them HR. They were personnel management and industrial relations and labor welfare. These were the two streams. So you'll find a lot of books. Labor welfare and industrial relations were largely drawn from legalistic orientation, went for collective bargaining and things of that nature. And personnel management dealt with recruitment, it dealt with compensation, it dealt with performance appraisals, promotion system, and quite a bit in some of the cases with administration, including management of canteens, assignment of other kind of welfare schemes and things like that. So that was the situation in 1974. But we had, I'm told we had a very good innovative, I don't know how long he stayed with IIM Ahmedabad. I'm told he worked for a short while in IIM Ahmedabad, later joined Larsen & Toubro. One Professor K.K. Anand. K.K. Anand joined L&T and he introduced an interesting appraisal system in 1972. 1974, one Dr. Denison Pereira, who used to work again with Master MSW in Baroda. In fact, he worked with also with Sarabhai and so on. He joined the Larsen & Toubro and he was Deputy General Manager Personnel. So he looked at the system, Anand left by the time, looked at the performance appraisal system and was not very happy with the way people were responding to this. So he invited Dr. Uday Parikh, who was a professor at IIM Ahmedabad, to examine the performance appraisal system and make recommendations to make it a lot more, whatever is the way, a lot more, I don't think Pereira mentioned innovative or anything like that. I think make it more responsive, make it better and things like that. And I joined in 1973. I was a junior colleague of Uday. Uday invited me to join him. And both of us together decided that we will use, I think Uday very much believed in a participative method. In fact, he is trained in National Training Laboratories, Bethel, and he believes very much in what we call as OD values. OD values are openness, collaboration, trustworthiness, proactivity, and of all these, I think the most important value is participation. He's one of those who believed that if you have to bring any change in an organization, it has to come through in a participative manner. So Uday and I drafted a proposal as a consultant project from IIM Ahmedabad, and the proposal said that we want to talk to your people and ask them what is the kind of appraisal system that they want. So both of us divided ourselves and we interviewed people at three levels: top level managers in L&T, and middle level and junior level. Those were called as covenanted and supervisory cadre officers. I think Mr. Naik, A.M. Naik, who later became president and made a lot of ripples, he was in the covenanted cadre, that is the junior most in those kind of days. So quite like Uday, we didn't divide. Uday never said, I will interview senior people, you interview juniors, nothing of that kind. We divided ourselves. I interviewed some seniors, middle level managers and juniors. And remember, in 1974, I was 28 years when I joined IIM Ahmedabad. And Uday may have been 53. He was born in 1925. So you can see he was about 53 years old. So though we have a big age group, I think we almost work like very closely, like two colleagues who always shared and things and so on. So we interviewed 40 of the managers cutting across various levels of Larsen & Toubro. And that is when we were putting all our notes together. Those days, I think Larsen & Toubro was very generous. The place where they used to put up was nothing less than Taj Mahal Hotel, closer to L&T house. So we were sitting in the old Taj, putting our notes together. And then we came up with this, that the personnel department, many people are very unhappy with the personnel department. And they suggested, in fact, I think some of the comments that they made, I still remember. They asked one question to us: show us in the performance appraisal, where is performance? I must tell you, we had a very interesting performance appraisal system even in those days, designed by K.K. Anand. The performance appraisal system started with one-page write-up of every employee. The performance appraisal was initiated by the employee himself, the performer, where he wrote on a piece of paper what are the contributions he has made in the last 1 year. It's an annual kind of an appraisal. And after that, what are the areas, what are his strong points, what are the weaknesses, and what are his aspirations, and passed it on to the boss. That's all. Self-appraisal was introduced by K.K. Anand, and it went to the boss. And after it reached the boss, what happened to the appraisal, nobody knew. The appraisal system consisted of the boss assessing the person on some qualities and making his ratings and passing it on to the personnel department, and the personnel department in collaboration with a team of people assessing the person and then deciding the increments and things like that. So this was the system. When we examined the system, first question people asked was, where is performance in this? Nowhere what I'm expected to do is given here. So this is point number one. Performance appraisal system should focus on performance. To focus on performance, we must define performance. Then who defines performance? The boss. We would ask a series of questions. People will say the boss should define the performance. Then some people say, no, I have been doing it. Let me define performance. My boss can only make changes in it. So the performance appraisal system should begin for a senior employee by the person himself on the basis of his experience stating, this is what is my performance, this is what I want to do next one. And the person passing it to the boss and the senior saying, okay, I agree with you, I don't agree with you, or the company has these plans, modify your work to suit these company plans, the boss shares the company plans and so on. So we came up with a system which in which every person is required, the seniors are required to share the plans of the company, juniors are required to put on a piece of paper in the light of it, what is it that they're expected to do. And after about 6-month period, they should have a mid-year review, which we called as a mid-year performance counseling session, where the senior listens to the junior, a junior speaks about what he has done in the last 6 months, and senior says, okay, I'm happy with this, not happy with it. And then at the end of it, suggests the ratings. They will not record the ratings, but only suggest, and suggest to him that, look, this is the way you need to improve in the next 6 months. And at the end of the year, the boss again sits with the junior, and the junior explains how he used the feedback he got in the media. And then at the end of it, the senior listens, and then finally rates the junior and shows him his rating. Now we thought of an open appraisal system where there is a dialogue, there is discussion, there is a lot of sharing of information, and at the end of it, ratings are shown. And when the ratings are shown, there is a fear that you cannot link it with rewards. And therefore we said that, look, we have to think of an appraisal system which should help people to be clear about their jobs, to learn from their seniors, and therefore it should not be linked with rewards. This, in my view, is a classic kind of a recommendation we made in the year 1974, where performance appraisal is meant for development, and performance appraisal should not result in ratings which determine the rewards of an employee. But the feedback, the rating should be given by a feedback. Then the rating should be used for feedback. But then the question is that how are you therefore going to reward good performers? That we said, we realized in those days, appraisal of performance for reward purposes is bound to be somewhat objective and somewhat subjective. It cannot be a one man's job, and therefore it is a team of people in a department which will look at all the inputs that are collected from various sources, sit together, and the committee decides who need to be given a reward, recognition or reward, or not given the reward. So that's a separate issue. But as far as the performance appraisal system is concerned, it is meant to build people, not meant for appraising to give rewards and things of that kind. This was a primary purpose. But then a whole lot of other issues came up. The issue was then what is it that the people can look for? Then we said, I think personnel department should also be able to provide opportunity for people to grow in the organization. That means there should be a potential development. There should be career development. There should be feedback and counseling. There should be training and development. If somebody is not doing a good job, some skills are weak, immediately he should be sponsored for training. So we came up with 7 subsystems linked to performance appraisal. Performance appraisal, potential appraisal, feedback and counseling, career planning and development, training and development, and organization development. All these things put together, then that is when we Christians sitting here, there in the Taj Hotel, we said that we'll call this Human Resource Development Department. This was the dialogue we had. It is with Dr. Parikh who suggested the term. Venkatesh, let us call this Human Resource Development. He uttered the words, I think to me, I think it's almost like it worked like magic. I said, that's wonderful. I think Uday will do it. But we didn't look for the English. It is commonsensical. Human Resources Development. We have not heard of this term. We didn't know at the time this is going to become so popular and so on. But then we said this can't be done by the personnel. And that is where we came up with an organizational structure where we said there should be a separate department, because we are actually talking of building competencies. Personnel is seen as a department that is attached with some fear. This department has to be worked on climate building, culture building, and commitment building. In fact, we defined in a way much later, we articulated it better. HRD department's main job is to build competencies of people to perform the current role, to perform the future likely roles, to develop their role, to work as team members, and to contribute on a continuous basis to organization development. Almost about 1975, 25 years later, Dave Ulrich came up with this interesting thing. HR is a strategic business partner. And what he means is what we have talked in 1975, that the HRD department should integrate individual capabilities with the organization. Competencies have to be derived from the organization. And therefore, potential appraisal, therefore, career planning and development. So that is how we conceptualize HRD system. We were asked to review a performance appraisal system, but our recommendation was the that to start a new department called HRD, separate it out, and it should be headed by somebody with more empathy, more compassion, and more. In fact, I think somebody with a little bit of a psychology background. It so happened Pereira had all those qualities. In fact, he was doing a lot of those. So he was shifted to the HR department, HRD department. He was redesignated as Deputy General Manager, Human Resource Development. And somebody else was put as Deputy Manager, Deputy General Manager Personnel, who looked after recruitment, who looked after other kind of aspects of the HR, because later we titled it as HR function, structured it and so on. That is 1974. Interesting part of this was when we presented our report, Denison Pereira said, Mr. Desai, who was president of Larsen & Toubro, used to work very closely. There used to be a professor in IIM called, known as Professor S.K. Bhattacharya. Bhattacharya redesigned, reorganized Larsen & Toubro. He and Ishwar Dayal reorganized State Bank of India, LIC, so many other corporations. I think their reports are remembered even today. So Bhattacharya was very close to Larsen & Toubro. And when Uday submitted this report, Denison Pereira said that this report should go to the board. I remember even today attending the board meeting where Hawk Larsen was there, N.M. Desai was president, and all top level people were there. They listened to the report, we made a presentation, and this is, I'm told, one report which was accepted in toto without any question. After a couple of hours of discussion, I think the next step L&T took was to name a task force to implement this. To implement the task force, line managers were drawn up. There was somebody by name Govind Advani, who was general manager. I think he was corporate planning or strategy or something like that. He was asked to head the task force. And Mr. S.R. Subramaniam, who was GM Pawai, who was a line manager, who was also brought in. Then there was one Mr. Rao, who was also brought in. So this was the HRD implementation task force, which worked for 3 full years to implement our recommendations, which were made in 1974. Now I leave Larsen & Toubro here. This is 1974, where we conceptualized HRD. We also conceptualized, I must mention here, the principles in designing HRD. Our consulting report, which was submitted in the year 1974, is available in a printed form with the Academy of HRD in Ahmedabad, pioneering HR, Larsen & Toubro's initiative. This report has 2 parts. The first part is what we did in 1974. The second part is what we subsequently had done in 1975. Because Mr. N.M. Desai asked us, we said that, look, this is not enough for you to move into the future. HRD is only a part of the story. You must re-examine your entire personnel function. And they asked us, okay, do that. So we re-examined and we came up with a new name for the entire function called as Human Resource Function. So we designed the function in which HRD is a part of it. Second part of it dealt with the personnel management. Third part of it dealt with the worker affairs, work redesign, work affairs and things like that. I think very interesting kind of things. That report is, even if you look at it, is valid even today. Why I mentioned this particular report is Uday and I came up with 15 principles of designing HR. What are the principles? I want to mention that these principles, which were thought of in the year 1974, when I look at them even today, they are still valid. We lifted up the HR function. We didn't know that we were doing it. We were doing it out of our own interest, our own academic kind of bent of mind. The first principle of HRD is the human resource function should build enabling capabilities of organizations. It's a beautiful sentence. You will find the principle is explained there. The purpose of human resource function, it's the function now, including HRD, is to build enabling capabilities of an organization. An organization should enable each individual to prosper as an individual, enable roles to be built, enable the teams to be developed, enable entire organizations to get into future. In fact, we included OD as a part of organization development, as a part of the human resource function. So looking back, I feel very nostalgic. The kind of principles, one of the principles we talked of is how do you balance the specialization with general kind of a thing. Every manager is specializing. Organizations are getting differentiated, but differentiation is bringing in a lot of conflicts, a lot of issues. It is the job of HR to balance specialization and integrate into the development of a corporation. We also talked of how to decentralize and at the same time centralize. L&T was expanding. We said there is no alternative but to decentralize. If you have outfits in Bhubaneswar or you have outfits in some other places, unless you decentralize, you can't get the best out of them. At the same time, you also have to centralize. So these 15 principles are very interesting kind of principles, even valid today. I am not very sure if Dave Ulrich or any other professors from US could have thought of these kind of things. But they, of course, their contributions are phenomenal. If you look at phenomenal contributions that have come from the University of Michigan and SHRM and other places. So this is 1974, 1975. Uday used to work with State Bank of India. In one of the board meetings, Uday talked about his work in L&T. So State Bank of India asked Dr. Parikh, I'm told in State Bank Staff College in Hyderabad, he went for a board meeting there and made a presentation of the HRD, the way we conceptualized. State Bank of India at that time was chaired by one Talwar. Dr. Talwar listened to this, and Talwar is known as a person who would take spot decisions. He decided, and the board decided, that they will start. I mean, there was no consulting report, there was nothing, only a talk by Uday Parikh. State Bank of India resolves that they will create a new department called Human Resources Development Department. And State Bank of India, you know, also has its associates. They were considered as a part of it. State Bank took a year, but within that 1 year, all associates of State Bank of India started HRD department. They started it much before the State Bank itself appointed a chief general manager HRD. The first chief general manager HRD was appointed sometime in the year 1977, if I recollect. But 76 already, the State Bank of Patiala, State Bank of Bikaner and Jaipur, State Bank of Mysore, State Bank of Trivandrum, Travancore, whatever, all these associate banks had a HRD manager. In fact, I remember all of them recommending them to attend one of the programs Dr. Parikh and I were conducting in Jaipur. This is an IIM program, managing motivation for development and so on. In fact, most of the people, 50% of the participants were HRD manager from associates. And I still remember one person by name Professor Y.K. Bhushan, who later became Narsee Monge Institute head, and now I think he heads one of the 5 institutes, and he was also ISTD president. He was in those days heading the personnel department, training, I think, of Central Bank of India. So he attended. So we trained these people to conduct climate surveys, HRD organizational climate surveys, because they said, where do we begin? We don't know what this HRD is. So we said the first thing you can do is find out what people are thinking about your organization. That is the beginning of your. So I think we did a number of things. That is for State Bank of India. The same thing happened with Professor S.K. Bhattacharya was invited. I think it's very interesting how IIM Ahmedabad influenced the various companies. Bhattacharya was known to help many companies to think forward, to look ahead. One of the companies that took the help of Professor Bhattacharya was Bharat Earth Movers in Bangalore. And to the extent I know, again, I think this is very interesting role played by a person like Ravi Mathai. Ravi Mathai, when I joined IIM Ahmedabad in 1973, he was no more director. In fact, I joined to set up an education systems group. So Ravi Mathai was on the board of many of these companies. So I'm told Ravi Mathai in one of the meetings, board meetings of Bharat Earth Movers, suggested to General Mani that you chaps are, I mean, at that time, Bharat Earth Movers was making only rail coaches and were thinking of making earth moving equipment. And were thinking to be, I think they were, in those days, they were a 30 crore company. They were planning to become a 50, 60, 70 crore company. I think this must be 1974, 75 or 76, something like that. So apparently, Ravi Mathai told the board, think big. And they said, how do we think big? He said, I have a professor in my institute who will help you to think big. So he would recommend Professor Bhattacharya to go there. Bhattacharya reorganizes Bharat Earth Movers, and he submits his report in which he says that, look, you should think big. You should be a 70 crore company. In the next 5 to 10 years, you should be a 700 crore company. How to do it? Then he creates group general manager, planning, group general manager, production. There are variety of group. There are a whole lot of things done. That is the way I think the organizational structuring, strategic thinking in Bhattacharya's mind worked. So then Bhattacharya and Uday made very good combination of consultants. Uday was in organizational behavior, and those days I think HRD was nowhere. The term was not used. It was only OB, and I was a member of OB area and also the and also education systems group. So Uday Parikh was invited. Now Bhattacharya has given us a report. Now can you help us? If I have to fill all these kind of things, what do we do? Now Uday Parikh gives a report saying, HRD, you start a HRD department, because HRD believes in competence building, culture building, commitment building. If you want to reach to Bhattacharya's ambition he has shown for you, HRD department is a must, because that is the department that plans for the future of the company by developing people. Then General Mani asks them, where do I get, what is this HRD? I never heard of it. Can you give some examples? The only example Uday Parikh could give is Larsen and Toubro. But Larsen and Toubro is a private sector. If we have to do it, we need somebody else. That is when I think Uday probably recommended to them, why don't you get, I have a young fellow working at IIM Ahmedabad, you get this young professor. So Bharat Earth Movers writes to IIM Ahmedabad, we want the services of one of your professors who conceptualize along with Uday Parikh, HRD, we need, can you, actually they offered me, why don't you join? I said, no, in a defense sector undertaking, what kind of a job can you give me? I had a flair for writing. I didn't want to leave the institute at that point of time. So Bharat Earth Movers, when they wrote to the institute, we thought about it, and I said that, look, I'll put a few conditions. You are a defense sector. Remember, it is 1978. 1978, I was 32 years old. And the defense sector, if you go through them, highly status oriented, bureaucratic, if you can look at, General Mani is the chairman. You have very senior people, directors. So I said that I would like to be appointed as general manager with the highest salary that you are paying to the general managers. Because the moment you have a designation and you have seniority, that should partly give me the kind of status that is required to be able to implement a new system. They said, fine, we have no problem. That was easy for them because I said, I'd only come from 1 year. So it's a project to appoint somebody as a senior general manager. Even if the fellow is 32 years, it doesn't matter because he is there only for 1 year. So second condition I have put is, I am going to join, you will identify, you will help me to identify some people from within the company who will be general managers or DGMs of HRD after I leave. So 1 year I am going to experiment, I am going to put a few people. So my job is to identify and set up the HRD systems. All that was agreed. So I went and I stayed for, I didn't complete 1 full year. I stayed for about 7-8 months because I was needed back at IIM for something. So I came back, but I continued to provide assistance for them. And lo and behold, Bharat Earth Movers did become in the next 10 years also, 700 crore company, prospered. And some of the HRD chaps later even became their CEOs and things like that. That's a separate kind of a story. So you have Larsen and Toubro, and you have State Bank of India and its associates, and you have Bharat Earth Movers, where I have actually experienced. I've had many interesting experiences in Bharat Earth Movers. If by chance you catch hold of this book called Designing and Managing HR Systems, that book is still available today. It went through 3 revisions, but one of the chapters that still is maintained is introducing HRD in a public sector company. That is filled with my experiences of both good and bad, and a good number of them are very funny experiences. And one of the experiences was, I was sitting in rail coach division, and I wanted to reorient all the people for HRD. And therefore I went to, rail coach division is controlled by general manager rail coach. And the person who is heading the rail coach division is railway people, people who came from railways when they become general manager. They're very powerful people. So this chap, general manager, is very, very powerful in the sense that he would decide everything. In fact, the hierarchy was so much that when I joined Bharat Movers, they gave me a welcome lunch. And when I went for the lunch, I observed that people always maintain about 3 to 4 meters of distance from the general manager. We were having lunch, it was a buffet lunch. I'm sitting and talking to the general manager and in a corner, and I find all the managers are in another corner. So I take the general manager to the other corner, all these chaps move to another corner. So that means, you know what, much later, there was this concept of power distance. I saw that power distance operating there. One of the experiences I mentioned was I went and asked the GM because we didn't have good training rooms in those days, for a training program to be conducted in the boardroom. And the general manager said, Arey, sorry, I can't give this. I have put a new carpet. I don't want all these fellows to come and spoil my carpet. So that is the status of HRD. You may say all great things, but finally, you don't want the carpet to be spoiled for training program. And that is the kind of status that from there, I think we have come a long way. These kinds of experiences I have narrated in this particular chapter. I didn't mention the name of the company. Now that so many years have passed, I think one can take liberty in mentioning. But this has a significance. It has significance because 1979, after I came back from BEML, I suggested to Uday, we must, I think we have done this for all these companies, we must write a book. So both of us held a workshop in IIM Ahmedabad on, we called it, that was the first workshop in human resources development, which was held in IIM. And for this program, I think our KLMDC just came into existence at the time. For this particular program, I still remember people like Anil Khandelwal. Anil Khandelwal was at that point of time working with, I think, State Bank of Bikaner and Jaipur or something like that. So he attended as a participant. We tested out various chapters of our book. And by 1980, we completed, and 1981, Oxford IBH published the first book on designing and managing human resource systems, where we have put across whatever ideas we have had. So this is a landmark book because I'm told this book has influenced a lot of thinking in HR. 1979-80, Crompton Greaves also thought of it. The person responsible for bringing in HRD in Crompton Greaves was Mr. K.K. Noria. And later by about 1985-86, Suresh Krishna and team in Sundaram Fasteners was talking about HRD. They already started HRD department. Sundaram Clayton had a DGM HRD. EID Paris started having HRD orientation and things like that. So there was, I think HRD started spreading by the year 1984-85. It was in 83, XLR, Larsen & Toubro gave a chair to XLRI, and XLRI was looking for people to take care of to be recruited as Larsen & Toubro chair professor. They approached me, and my first reaction was, I'm not interested in any chair professorship. This is because I used to work very closely with Professor Mathai. And once when I talked to Professor Mathai about a offer of similar kind, he said, why do you want to go for as a chair professor at a young age? You will go as a chair professor now, and after 3 years you want to come back, you want to go from one chair to another chair. I think your life will be moving from chairs to chair. If you want to do good work, you don't need a chair. I think that is his way of probably telling that. So I knew that he would probably not, I was very close, of course, probably working with him. So I didn't even want to ask him. I didn't think that I would want to go to Jamshedpur. But later came the news. I was doing some workshop in Bangkok with UNESCO. Somebody called me up to say that, look, this chair is going to be offered to such and such person. But the chair is open to you if you still want to go. When I had, by the time I developed a lot of attachment to HRD, the concept of HRD, human resource development. It almost indirectly became a kind of a mission, because I strongly believed in HRD as a philosophy: competence building, commitment building, culture building and things like that. So 1983, when I heard this, then I sent a message saying that I'm rethinking about this L&T chair, and called up HRD, the director of XLRI, and told him, I will come there provided you will help me to start a center for HRD. The reason why I thought of this was we had a committee for future directions in IIM Ahmedabad, and I wanted a center for HRD to be started, center for entrepreneurship to be started, but the committee didn't agree. He said every professor who comes up with a new center, if there is going to be a center, then there is not going to be enough space here. So this committee headed by Dr. Rangarajan and people like Vyas were involved. I think they had other ideas. They were starting faculty development centers and so on. So they didn't think. So I said, let me therefore go to XLRI to start the Center for HRD. So Romuald D'Souza, I agreed. So I went on leave from IIM Ahmedabad. I stayed there only for an year and a half because Ravi died during that period, and there was an inner calling for me. I must get back to my institute because Ravi is not there. We started something in IIM. Uday Parikh went to Indonesia by the time, and he was going to retire soon. So I returned back to IIM. While returning back, we had an obligation. The L&T chair had an obligation to at XLRI to conduct a national seminar. The national seminar was held in Bombay, and it was a 4-day seminar. And in the 4 days, we were only discussing experiences and conceptualization. Pereira presented the practice in L&T. I presented the conceptual part of it. And at the end of 4 days, there were a lot of experiences shared. Some interesting, very exciting kind of experiences. One of the experiences, I keep mentioning this is how the HRD network was born. One of the participants said that, Professor Rao, I have read your book, Parikh, and your book, Designing HR Systems. I came here to learn a little more, but I check with most of these people. To tell you frankly, sir, nothing is happening in the name of HR. Some of these people have designated many people as HR managers out of fashion. And I am one such case. I have been recruited by my company as a HR manager, HRD manager. I joined with a lot of enthusiasm. I read your book and I thought I can do a number of things. But sir, every time I go to my chairman or a managing director and want to do something, he says that can wait. You know, what I am doing is very routine jobs, practically counting tables and chairs and manpower. There is no HRD. It is only exists in your books. It is, I think most of the people are not yet ready. It is a fashion. It is a fact. This is what one participant said. Another participant said, okay, I'm happy to hear this comment from my colleague. I want to tell you my story. And he told his story. He said, I was in the same situation a year and a half ago. I was also recruited as a HRD manager. My MD never allowed me to do anything. And all that I was doing is cursing myself. But one fine morning, I attended a local management association and became a member of the programs committee of the local management association. I enrolled myself, and during the programs committee meetings, one of the members said, what is the next topic we should have for talk? I said HRD. And they said, HRD, who is going to speak? My CEO will speak. My MD will speak. Why don't you invite him? He said, I just took chance. I wanted my MD to go there and speak about HRD, whatever happens. So the management association wrote a letter to my MD asking him to speak. Naturally, my MD will come to me, say that, look, I got this letter, what do I do? So he came to me and he said, what do you think I should do? I said, sir, you should speak. It's a good opportunity. It's good brand building opportunity. Not many people think of HRD. You have recruited me. You are the only one thought of it. Sir, it is only a few months, so you should speak. He agreed to speak. And a few days before his speech, he asked me, what should I speak? He said, I have gone through Professor Rao, Parikh and Rao's book, summarized, prepared some transparencies. Those days, you know, transparencies is the way, and slides, and gave it to him. He went, he had a chat, then I gave the book to him. He had a chat, and ultimately he gave a wonderful talk. This is how HRD should be. And next day he comes to me and asks me, this is a good talk here. Thank you very much. Now prepare your plan for implementing HRD. We should do HRD. He said, now I am in the game. I have done a number of things in the last few months. This is the way you need to. So don't give up. Don't expect MDs to have all good ideas about it. HRD. They have put you as a HRD manager. It is your job to actually introduce HRD. I'm just giving an illustration. 4 days we were discussing like this. So at the end of 4 days, I have put a little bit of a thought in the minds of these people. I said that, look, you have only Pereira gave a 2-hour lecture. I gave 2-hour talk. And after this 3.5 days, we were only sharing experiences. Should we share experiences only if there is a seminar by XLRI? Can this be done without XLRI? They said, why not? Why don't we therefore think of this on a continuing basis? We should do that. Should it be limited to only Bombay? Why can't we do it wherever? So I got a few people to volunteer. We had a few people from Bangalore. One K.S. Rao volunteered from Bangalore. One Dr. Chandrasekhar. I mean, he was not doctor at the time. Chandrasekhar with L&T ECC volunteered. PVR Murthy volunteered. And from Delhi, one P.K. Sarangi working with IOC volunteered. From Baroda, one Rajan Gupta and Rajan Jori volunteered. Ahmedabad, K.K. Verma volunteered. So I think that was the birth of National HRD Network and its chapters. In 1987, we had the first seminar. 86, we registered it. This body was registered. The purpose of this body, the main purpose of the body was to disseminate HR philosophy across all companies. Many companies are starting HRD. They don't have much of a clue. Personnel departments have renamed themselves as HRD, but they are continuing to do the same old kind of a thing. Training departments have renamed them as HRD. By the time HRD has become a fashion, a kind of a wave came from US. In US, they renamed all training and development as HRD. So training and development got renamed, personnel got renamed. The real HRD, what we talked of, got limited only to a few companies. So we said, therefore, our job is, are you able to hear me? Let me check. I hope it does not become one-way talk.
No, we are all able to hear you. Please carry on.
Good. Yeah, I will stop in the next 10 minutes. I think it's a long story. If I get involved, I speak from the heart. It's difficult to stop. But anyway, let me give you a little more, and then by 4:35, another 10 minutes. So the main reason for starting National HRD Network, even today, if you go through their philosophy, it is to disseminate HR philosophy in all sections of the society, in all sectors, not only in the corporate sector. And these chapters are means. We should get the non-governmental agencies involved, government involved, and a whole lot of things. Go to the HRD Network website. It is slightly changed than what we have conceptualized in those days, because it has been, in my view, polluted by too much of corporate sector. When corporate sector pollutes it, what happens is they introduce terms like competitiveness and the profits, survival. I mean, to me, these are not important words at all in HRD. What is important in HRD is competence building, commitment building, culture building, and things like that. But anyway, so we started this. 1987, the success of the HRD network was because of very close work of a few people. And I must say, one of the persons responsible for this is Father Abraham, who was working as my PhD student in IIM Ahmedabad. He was registered for Gujarat University. Later, he became director of XLRI. The second was one K.K. Verma, who was principal of the Bank of Baroda Staff College. Third was Anil Khandelwal, who was a faculty in Bank of Baroda Staff College. Fourth most important person, great organizer, is Mr. Chandrasekhar, who was heading HRD in Larsen & Toubro Construction Group. 5 of us together designed this particular conference. And we said, this is one conference where every participant who reaches the conference will carry a book with him. So we got some path-breaking papers published in this book and distributed this book on the first day of the conference in the year 1987. So it was such a great thing for people to see a book, Alternative Approaches and Strategies of HRD. The second thing we said was that this conference should be started by CEOs. So first day of the conference was addressed by Suresh Krishna, who was Sundaram Fasteners chairman at the time. MV Arunachalam, MV Subaya from EID Parry, Venu Srinivasan from Sundaram Clayton in those days, Denadayan from Madras refineries in those days, Kalyan Sundaram, State Bank of India Managing Director, one D.V. Kapoor, Director of Indian Oil Corporation, K.K. Noria from Gives, one full day on HRD by CEOs. This is 1987. That made a lot of difference. Made a lot of difference. We had iShares sharing their experiences, L&T ECG itself sharing their experiences. Wonderful kind of a thing. So it was decided, in fact, in the 1987 conference, when we had an annual general meeting, in the conference, it so happens now for everything there is an IIM Connect. We had a fellow student from IIM Ahmedabad. She joined as, I don't know what she joined as, one Meenakshi Kasliwal. She was sitting at the back, and in the general body meeting, he said, I've been following these 2 days of deliberations of HRD network, great deliberations, but let me tell you, give you my feedback. It looks as though HRD is meant only for managerial class. It has nowhere a word said about labor class, nowhere a word said about workmen. Is HRD meant only for managers and not for workers? I think these feedback or these words of this nature make a lot of difference. I caught on that. In fact, many of us caught on that. We said the next conference is going to be HRD for workers. And by the time we had a great president of National HRD Network, MRR Nair of SAIL, he was director personnel. He, I think, was responsible. He, Sarangi, Anil Sajdev, Arvind Agarwal, a whole lot of people sitting in Delhi were responsible to make the 1989 conference a great success. It was a fact book with about 600 pages. They invited union leaders, association leaders. They invited politicians to talk about HRD and its linkages, industrial relations and things like that. Path-breaking kind of a thing that was done. So then 89, 90, we were thinking, we had again a meeting in Chennai. We felt that a professional body has limits. They can only keep meeting once in a while, hold conferences, seminars. Beyond that, they can't do anything. So we said, what next? How can the HRD take the mission ahead? So we had a one full day mission vision workshop. One full day of it. This was facilitated by Anil Sachdev. I'm sure some of you know, and V.S. Mahesh. Mahesh was in those days working with Taj Group of Hotels. Both of them facilitated this. Uday Parikh was there, I was there, Murthy, a whole lot of other people. At the end of the mission vision workshop, we decided professional bodies have limitations. They can do only up to a point. What therefore we should do is to start an institution for promoting HRD. And this institution should not only be working on corporate sector, they should be working on not-for-profit organizations, NGOs, and should also work with government. That is when we conceptualized the Academy of Human Resources Development. Mr. Nair wrote to Director IIM Ahmedabad, Professor Narayan Sheth at that time, saying that we have decided to start an Academy of HRD and we need somebody to help this. Will you be able to spare the time of Professor T.V. Rao? Professor Narayan Sheth called me and said that, look, we started by the time Ravi Mathai's Center for Educational Innovations. One of the tasks of the center was institution building. So Narayan said, TV, spend as much time as you want and build this institution. Only one requirement I have. Write up your experiences. Document your experiences. Of course, I was continuing to teach whatever I was teaching in IIM, but I worked as an honorary director of the Academy of HRD for almost about 2 years to set it. And we had done a number of things, including starting up a diploma program, starting up a part-time fellow program in collaboration with XLRI, which I think went through ups and downs. Today, I think that program has almost graduated 35 doctorates, and another 50 to 60 people are on way. It doesn't have a recognition. At one time, it had recognition because of XLRI. But today, I think they all say that, look, we'll also prepare you for another university and so on. But I think 35 doctoral dissertations in HRD is not a small thing. in a matter of 15 to 20 years. I think all these people are employed in some great places. One of them teaches at XLRI, is a professor. Another person went in IIM Indore, then went to IIM Bangalore. I went to Infosys and so on. So I think some of them are well-known kind of people. I think one of the persons is the CEO of one of the big IT companies, Capgemini. Then we have number of them teaching as part-time teachers in XLRI and so on. So this is the HRD network, Academy of HRD's contributions. I'll close this to say, I think from post-92, a lot of things happened. You are all witness to this. Post-liberalization, the way HRD has taken shape. What happened in my view to HRD post-liberalization was, HRD fell into the trap of the profit pressures, quarterly reviews, and quarterly reporting, monthly reporting, and high salaries. You know, when you have to pay very high salaries to people, then you make them accountable. And everyone says, now SEBI and others saying that, look, every quarter you have to give your report. Quarterly wisdom has to be talked of. Newspapers are talking about. So human resource development, I keep jocularly saying, in human resource development, I think in 80s, the development got replaced by department, and that is why we had to start HRD network, Human Resource Development Network. So development has gone to background and department came to the forefront. And post-liberalization, human went to the background, resources became to the forefront. By about 2000 and 2008 crisis we have seen, today in many companies, HRD meant business, strategic business partner. HRD is business. Therefore, its job is to look at human beings as the mechanisms of achieving business targets, not as human beings. So that human went to the background and human resource development became only resources department. And no wonder when I heard Sadhguru about 5 years ago saying, human is not a resource. It's a crime to call human being a resource. Human is a possibility. It struck me. And I from HRD, therefore, when he says human is not a resource, what he means is you have reduced human to a resource. That is not correct. And you drop D. So therefore, philosophy-wise, no change. It is the same thing that we talk. If you look at 1974, we said human beings are born with there is no alternative than to talk of lifting up the spirits of people through human resource development. And there is no alternative to saying HRD is not the job of HRD department alone. HRD is the job of every human being. So every person becomes the HRD development or spiritual manager for himself. Don't wait for HRD department to serve, to lift you up. You have to lift yourself up. Having said that, I also maintain that doesn't mean HRD departments have become redundant. HRD departments have a role to play. You are a facilitator to make everyone to take charge of so the day when you can make this happen, you are not needed. The job of HRD department is to make itself redundant by building others to a level of maturity that you are not needed. Because I always believed in Mathai's philosophy. And in fact, those of you who know Ravi Mathai, when he left as director of IIM, he always believed in this. That is one of the reasons why he stepped aside. He always felt there is phenomenal amount of talent. And when you decide to continue as a professor, you don't become powerless. Your time is released through much larger kind of things. And therefore, when you make yourself redundant, the institution grows and you also grow. You create new opportunities for growing. So HRD will never become redundant, but unless they work for redundancy, they probably will be limiting the lives of people. This is the kind of philosophy. So today, that is where we stand. Uh, I didn't think that I would speak so long about I have talked more about my journey, but I think it's not my journey. I have said we moved from a department of personnel department to welfare department to HRD as a philosophy. And that is what I think HRD should be today. If tomorrow we are inviting somebody, spiritual gurus to talk about HRD, it makes a hell of a lot of sense. My only unhappiness with most of the academics is they are still looking for HRD from the West. Unless they read some of the books are wonderful books. I mean, certainly I would any day recommend reading Dave Ulrich, because he is one who has contributed a good deal by writing wonderful kind of things. But I think we have a lot in our own HRD. I don't mean to say read my books. I think that there is a lot of HRD even in our scriptures. Most interesting thing I had come across from one of my PhD students. He was watching, I was watching, he's a PhD student. He later wrote a book, his own PhD dissertation. He's one H.N. Arora. He lives in Delhi now. He was working with Reliance. Later, he went to join Escorts. Then he worked with Dr. Trehan in Escorts Heart Institute. He was doing his PhD with me. And that was the time in 1992, Mahabharat was being telecast. I was watching that particular serial in which Bhishma Pitamaha was lying on the bed of arrows, and Yudhishthir goes to ask him. He knows that he is going to die. Bhishma Pitamaha is one of those who had this great boon of choosing the day of his death. So Yudhishthir knows he is going to, now the war is over. He goes to take his wisdom about how to be a good king, good leader. And now the serial talks about Bhishma Pitamaha is giving lecture. And in the talk, I heard Bhishma Pitamaha narrating the qualities of a leader, beautiful kind of qualities, compassion, etc., etc. I don't remember the qualities now. You can go through this. But one of the things he said is take care of the environment. Don't cut, almost saying don't cut trees. So I called up Arora. Arora was still in Ahmedabad. He was doing his PhD on a similar topic. And I knew that he reads a lot of Gita, Bhagavad Gita, Ramayana, Mahabharata, and so on. I said, HN, I think I can't believe that Bhishma Pitamaha would talk of environment in those days. TV, no, you're mistaken. He really talked of it. And he got the actual passages of this particular Shanti Parva or whatever you call it from there. And I was quite surprised to see that even in those days, whosoever has written thought of environment. What is COVID-19 teaching us? Take care of the environment. If you cut trees, if you don't take care of the environment, if you came from the nature, if you don't respect the environment, then what happens? So I think there is a lot of wisdom. So to me, HRD draws from everywhere. HRD is life. That is the way I look at it. That is the journey of HRD. Anyone who teaches HRD is incomplete if you are not going to look at some of these things. Draw from life itself. So you should read Indian books, Western books, draw from life, listen to spiritual gurus. I think to me, the journey is only complete when you say that this is the ultimate kind of a goal and so on. I'll stop here, friends. Thanks for listening with patience. I hope I made some sense. I'll be quite happy to take any questions. There is an article on on this, and there is also a PowerPoint which I sent to Dr. Puri. He'll share with you if you write to him. There are a lot of videos. If you go to my channel, TV Rao channel on YouTube, you will come across almost about 150 and odd videos on different aspects of HRD and so on. Okay, I'll stop here. Dr. Puli, now it's all yours. I'm sorry I have overshot what I wanted to do. So I hope it makes some sense.
So thank you very much for your wonderful session, sir. Now I request all the participants to join their hands for applaud to Professor Rao for wonderful program, and taken us a journey HR in India. Yes, we started from a sapling and today it's a big forest. So yes, now it's a time for all of us to reap the fruits from this forest. So now it's a time for question and answers. There's one of our student, Dore Nayar. She wanted to ask one question. Yes, Dore Nayar.
Yeah, go
Hiren
ahead,
Nayak.
please.
Good evening, sir.
Yeah, what's your question?
I want to know what all skills we need to go under HR, sir. What skills the HR manager expect from us?
Please be louder and slow. Repeat once again your question.
So I want,
I got the question. The skills required by a HR manager today.
yes,
Okay. Okay, that's a very good question. I have a book by name HRD Missionary. You get hold of this. There are many books, I think, on HRD. It will give you a lot of skills. But I think some of the one is, of course, see, HRD has, I don't want to talk of the legal part, discipline part, IR part. I always say, like Maslow's need hierarchy in a company, if you are a HR manager, you have to, some of the companies expect you to do a lot of industrial relations. I don't want to talk of that. That is the basic needs. Similarly, stability, peace, stability, and growth. I'm talking of HRD, which is growth. If you want to be a growth or human resource development manager, I think you need you need to have very high desire to learn, very high desire to learn. If you are not constantly learning, learn from different sources, respect for everyone. And you should be an integrating mind, not a divisive mind. Don't look at people whom you come across as belonging to a particular caste, religion, community, designation levels, and things of that kind. So I think to be able to integrate and compassion, empathy, and most important thing is respect for human being. There are a lot of these soft skills that are required. Hard skills are, of course, whatever you learn. I think it's a good idea if you are coming from the B school background. It's good to know bit of business, because ultimately HRE is going to be applied for making people to give their best. I certainly think that I would recommend everyone to read a bit of psychology on human behavior, basics of psychology and so on. So a lot of things are required, but if you ask me most important skills, the most important skill is your ability to look at people as people. Focus on human being as born with unlimited capability, a lot of optimism, compassion, empathy, and initiative and so on. I can give a full day's talk on this. Okay.
I have a question.
So any other questions?
Can I ask a question?
Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
sure.
Professor Chachdi.
Professor Chachdi from Chaitanya Business School. I have a question. In
Yes,
fact,
sir.
I have
Sure.
been teaching long time, and you're very apt in saying that the human part is gone. Only the resources department has remained. Now, in the context of the competitive era and various other developments, is there any possibility of reviving the human aspect again? Can we bring it back to that spirit with which it was designed?
I think well, I don't know. We should attempt. There is no question. I'll never give up. I have written recently a paper called Human Resources or Human Possibilities. I can pass this paper on to you. I'm recommending there should be a new cadre of people developed who can be called as human possibility facilitators or human possibility leaders. I hate to call them managers. But the moment you put a term manager, then they are only managing. They are not leading. They are not facilitating. So I prefer to call it human possibility facilitator, human possibility leader. And I'm also recommending this leader, this person should not have a fixed salary. He should be a volunteer. He should not belong to, he should not be a part of the existing structure. He should be like a spiritual guru. And he may be a young fellow, 23-year-old, because I have seen, for example, if you go to Isha Foundation, Ashram, go to Ramakrishna Mission, go to any of these places, you find many young fellows who are good gurus because they thought through, they have sacrificed, they want to be there, and so on. So I'm proposing that there should be human possibility facilitators who probably main job is to simply go around being available for people and so on. But you suppose you don't want to do that. You want to use the existing department. It depends on how much spoiled your HRD department today is. If your HRD department is thoroughly spoiled and they are only doing routine things and they are enjoying the power of allocating houses, allocating perquisites and other kind of things, and have forgotten the human part of it, or only allocating KRAs and so on, I think you will have a long way to go, because the CEO will get lost if you suddenly say, I will convert this department to focus on human beings. Because this fellow will go and say that, look, cut down the top management salaries by 50% and make it available for the younger fellows. Now, I think some CEOs may accept, but many CEOs say, this is not what I am paying you for, and so on. So I think it's a difficult answer, but I think a variety of possibilities exist. That is why I'm saying maybe it is time that we should have alternatives. At any point of time, a current HRD manager says, I want to take a year off and be a human possibility facilitator. Give me whatever you like. Pay me whatever you like. 1 year sabbatical, 2 years sabbatical. I want to do this. Now, why only HR department? Any line manager can do that. I think we should be able to create the culture. I think COVID-19 is a great opportunity, because the world is going to be different in the next few months. Okay. Of course, some of us will say the way people are going, lining up, queuing up at liquor hotels, liquor places, nothing is going to change. But I think this is only a small part of our. There are many others who probably are as very careful. And as somebody very jocularly said, liquor is not all that bad, because it is a liquor that seems to be lifting up the economy. So I think.
Hello, sir. Am I audible? This is Saptarshi
Yeah,
Mitra
yeah.
speaking. Am I? Yeah.
Yes, sir.
My question is, with the permission of Professor Vishwanath, I would just Kodavi sir. I would just
Go
like
ahead.
to ask.
Yes, go ahead.
Yes, sir. My question is to Professor Rao. Sir, first I would like to thank you for a very superb session on this. There are really some very important points that have been made. Likewise, this human dimension and how this HRD development and all these things can really create some kind of impact. My question is, can we really think of measuring these things in terms of numbers? Because philosophy, I mean, these philosophies are very good, but what my point is, how can we really think of modeling the things so that this philosophy can be transformed into some kind of science? That's what I mean. Can we really think of that by modeling these
Well,
things?
you can think of it, but sometimes I feel I have ambivalent. I don't have a very, I don't want to say pakka attitude on this, but I'm quite, if you have followed some of the recent Harvard Business Review literature, there are questions raised about the measurement. Measurement
Okay.
has limits. In fact, Sadhguru says anything that measured limits the capability. And that is why he says, I don't want to measure human resources. Possibility has no measurement. Anything is possible. So having said that, I would discourage you from over applying measurement. But in corporate sector, you have enough measures. Nobody is going to keep quiet. You will ultimately say, I have invested so much. What is my ROI and things of that kind. So you can do that. If you want to do that, you can do all those kind of things. But I'm not very sure how far you are likely to go. To me, it might hit at the very basic philosophy of human possibility. But having said that, somebody may ask me this question. I wrote a book called Economics of Human Resources, where I measured the competence, talent of people by time. It's a very interesting book. I discovered if you are paying 10,000 rupees salary in a month to any employee, that person is costing 1 rupee a minute. So a 15-minute tea break is already costing you 15 rupees of that particular person. And if two people decide to have 30 rupees plus the cost of the tea. And the opportunity, I also cost is in manufacturing sector 10 times, so 150 rupees. So 15-minute tea break is going to cost you 150 to 300 rupees if you are already, this is a way of measuring. And the reason why I did was to say, this should help you to respect human being. This is such a human being is not just, it is an underestimate, total underestimate. Time and talent, I think, are immeasurable. That is the philosophy that I have. But if somebody wants to make a point and measure, measurement is always welcome to make a point, but don't end with that. It can be a beginning. It should not be the end. Don't reduce
No.
human beings through.
No,
And
sir, actually my point was not to reduction of the things. I just wanted to reduce the kind of negative impacts that you were talking about. I mean,
no,
just
you
for the
can have
sake of
models.
development.
Absolutely. Oh, you should do that. Why not?
Because
There is
these days people,
spirituality quotient. Everything is converted into a quotient nowadays. There is a emotional quotient, spirituality quotient. All kinds of quotients are coming. Measuring is possible, sir. And I think that is the job, business of educationists and certainly professors. Many of you professors are listening to this. I will not discourage you at all from developing models. I think you should. And after all, it is this human resource development system which we conceptualized in 1975, which brought us to work towards this. Today I may talk of philosophy, but I think certainly it is a system. System and spirit, I think both are important. So I'm with you, sir. I have no, it's possible.
sir, I just extending one thing, sir. You just said, Professor Rao, you said you have written a book on this. I mean, might I get some access to this book? I mean, what are the ways of
HURCONOMICS, Herconomics, Human Resource Economics. Just type my name, Herconomics by TV Rao. It's there by Pearson. You'll get
Thank
it.
you,
I
sir.
think you get a soft copy of the book.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you.
Yes,
Thank you.
thank you,
In fact,
Saptarshi.
you go to my YouTube. You can go to YouTube and put TV Rao channel. I have a series of 10 talks, short talks of 3-4 minutes each on Herconomics.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Yes, we'll take a question from Dr. A. Jagan Reddy. Yes, sir, go ahead. Yes.
Yeah,
Sir, you have to
I can't
unmute.
hear the question.
You have to unmute and speak.
Okay.
Yeah. Speak up now.
Yeah. Good evening, sir.
Hi, good evening.
Sir, I had the privilege of accompanying you when you visited APSFC way back in the
Ah.
80s for a consultancy project.
Oh yeah, with Professor Raghunath and
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Jayant Verma.
Yes, sir. We traveled to Nalgonda.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I remember
still
that. Yeah, I remember visiting the
remember,
small
sir.
industry. Oh, nice
You
of
used to
you.
say
Yes.
every
Yeah.
manager, culture, commitment, competency. Sir, when you say that, we should look at, because the other day I have attended your another webinar also. Nowadays you're talking about, human resources, a possibility and all that. Now, in the appraisal, now we moved from, annual, that ritual to what I call, periodical feedback as such. In other words, don't you think that, we, recognize the what I call need to share the feedback in a transparent manner and interested in his development? But nowadays, of late, I find, Professor TV Rao trying to be more holistic, more concerned about the development. And maybe, I'm sorry if I say that, ignoring the development of the organization or growth of the organization. Because when we talk of triple bottom line, sir, we talk of people, profit, and the planet. I want you to respond, sir.
I don't know, but one of the things is I have not given up what we have been talking all these years on performance appraisal.
Yes, sir.
I strongly believe that don't call it anymore appraisal. We call it performance management system.
Okay.
And in fact, our approach to performance management is changing. The only trouble is it is sometimes difficult to convince all CEOs. You need to very, very closely work with them. I think everything stands. Performance should be planned. Performance should be reviewed. There should be more dialogues. There should be more transparency, and there should be continuous coaching. The only thing is, across the last 40-45 years, I am every day by day, I am more and more convinced that appraisal is a subjective matter.
Wow.
And the objectivity can only come with more dialogue. There is nothing like an objective appraisal. The more you talk, the more you appreciate, the more you understand each other, I think subjectivity gets reduced. That is what is difficult, because you say, okay, all this is all right here, but now ultimately I have to earn my bread and butter, or I have to look at the profits. How do you link it with profits? Now, this is an inherent pain. Now, I heard, I've not read too many literature on this, but I heard Sadhguru say this. This is a very interesting thing. I assume that he reads quite a bit. He says that when people are happy, they give their best. And people are unhappy, they give their best is not true. They can't give their best. Make people happy. Bring excitement. Now, we
Yes.
believe in this. Now, how do you want, somebody wants to say, demonstrate this to me. We can do all kinds of correlational studies, have a questionnaire to measure happiness. But more important is not questionnaire to measure happiness. How do you create that happiness? That happiness comes through dialogue. And PMS becomes a good tool if you practice it, if you understand it, and things of that kind. So I have not given that up. In fact, I keep, even today, if somebody asks me, running a one-day workshop on performance management system and things like that. But only thing is, I tell them in the beginning, I am probably, some of my ideas probably at this point of time are at a different level. If it doesn't suit you, please, look for an alternative. So I don't want to say this is the only thing that helps people to, it's possible, but nothing of the fundamentals are given up. More and more dialogue.
Yes, thank you, sir.
Thank
Now we take a question from Dr. Manoj Dolli, Professor Sri Krishna Deva Raya University, Ballari.
Yes, sir.
No, Manoj, you are not audible.
Hello.
Yeah, now you are audible. Speak up.
Yeah.
Manoj,
No.
is not clear.
Hello.
Yeah.
Not clear.
Hello. Am I audible, sir?
Yeah,
Yes,
now
yes.
better.
Yeah.
Not audible. Why don't you otherwise put on the chat box?
Manoj, you can type your question there on chat box. We'll take a question. Yes, yes, please. Yeah. So anybody else? Yeah. Professor Uday Lavate, former director of Global Business School, Hubli.
Good evening.
Yeah.
It was very interesting, and I was in the corporate for quite some time. So it was relevant from both the teaching side and the practice side. Now, just one question. In this COVID-19, post-COVID-19 scenario, the role of HRD, L&D, everything is going to change drastically because of the work from home, remote locations, and all those kind of things, even within a company. Your example of L&T was wonderful because it is multi-locational, but here in a single unit also now there are going to be 70, 80, 100 people working across the city. How do you measure their productivity? Because in the office itself, I work for 8 hours. I don't work for 8 hours. I work for hardly 3 or 4 hours. Now, in a work from home situation, how is that going to change? And how is HR going to adapt to these things?
I look at it this way. I have a feeling post COVID-19, HR's role has become even more important if they only understand. In fact, I think HR's role can't be performed only by HR. It's a great opportunity for HR.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Prepare a few more people to be HR driven and do that. A simple thing, if HR is sensitive, even in a 100-member company, last you have already gone through 1.5 months of shutdown. What was happening to people in these 1.5 months? You need to have a little bit of a research mindset. You need to be in touch with people. Even if you are in touch with 5 people every day, in 30 days you would have covered everyone. And you go back to them, and then you would have asked them what is happening to you, what way. And you meaningfully in touch, not only to ask questions. So if you have to be of a person who can help people to derive happiness out of work, how can you do this without understanding them? And you have to, and this understanding is the beginning for bringing out any other kind of interventions. I think this is not going to affect everyone in the same way. Working from home, some people were wishing for it, wonderful. But some people hate it. Okay, now what is the way in which you can? So it's a great opportunity for HR to treat every human being as a human being, and therefore come up with his. And if you are able to manage 100 people, if you are able to, next 6 months you use, 3 months you use, you have understood them, you worked out strategies, you worked out mechanisms, and let's say 3 months, okay, you are in a study period. 6 months later, your company is back to I think the great old days and so on. You have already demonstrated yourself better than VSCU. Okay, so I think it's a great opportunity. We need to have my inquisitive mind. We need to. We don't start with solutions, but we start with a desire to learn and diagnose. That's what I
Yeah.
think.
Thanks.
Thank you, Professor Uday. Now, there's a question from Dr. Manoj, who is sent on a chat box. So I'd like to take that question. Professor Rao, how to take effectively performance appraisal or HRD and HRM at a larger scale in the government organizations? Am I right, Manoj?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Very good question. I am sorry we have struggled for 45 years. There is no easy, there is no easy solution. I was on this committee of civil service reforms. My colleague, Professor Kalro, was actually a member, and they all invited me to work on the performance appraisal of civil services. This is now almost 10 years ago. You know, there is a report. You must read that report. It is now, I think, buried somewhere, because once the new government came, they have not bothered about it. One of the things we tried to do is to say that start with simple things. One of the simple things is to define the work for many of these people, knowing fully well. Some people you can't define, but at least put on a piece of paper, identify competencies that are required, use something like a 360-degree feedback, not as a control tool, but as a development tool and things of that kind. The tragedy with government is anything that you suggest, I think only remains in reports. And I think there are too many vested interests there. So in fact, you don't need to go for the government. I only wish public sector becomes more sensible. They conduct seminars and conferences, and they invite a few consultants, and these consultants give them link your appraisal with rewards. You know, this is one of the disastrous things that happened in the last 10 years. Public sector, which is peaceful, linked performance appraisals with rewards by introducing variable pay. There is a lot of international experience that is available that this variable pay in a sector that has been started out of social responsibility is not likely to work. Because in some of the public sector, location itself is to take care of the employment. You employ somebody out of social responsibility, you change different norms, on the top of it you want to. So I think many people for quite some time were struggling, how do we implement it and things like that. I think our government does right things at wrong time and wrong things at right time. So it becomes a little difficult. I wish I have an answer to your question. It's a difficult
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you.
We'll take one last question from Dr. Manohar, Chairman, Karnataka chapter of AIMS, Bangalore.
Thank you, Dr. Krishna. Thanks a lot. Professor,
nice
it's always very rewarding listening to you and interacting with you. I have one question, in business schools and educational institutions, we do face a big challenge when it comes to now we are entering a totally new era of educating people and getting educated as well. If you take accreditation, they have certain parameters and everything has to be redefined now with the kind of online classes that are there, the kind of documentation that is required, the performance, appraisal, etc. Whether it is faculty or delivery or the syllabus, everything has to be redefined. And if we wait any longer, it will be too late. People like you should now come back to the mainstream to join to redefine the whole thing, and then let's tell the government, let's tell the accreditation bodies and the regulatory bodies, now these are the new norms, this is the new that we have to enter into. So what is your take on this kind of a situation, and then how do we go about it, Professor?
Well, I have really not followed what is happening now, what is the way in which AICTE or HRD ministry is responding to this. And unless I read this, I won't be able to comment on that. But the way I look at it is, I don't think fundamentals and whatever knowledge you have should change, because you are now moving into online education and so on. If at all there is a change, it has got to be a lot more enriched. I don't think you're going to totally do away with the contact sessions and things like that. I'm hoping that a large part of whatever we are doing will be online. But at some point of time, what can't be taught online if there is something. I think we'll of course constantly discover everything can be taught online. But there is nothing that can't be taught online. If everything can be taught online, then why not teach everything online? Where is the point of their coming to your school? Then you use your buildings and other things for other kind of things. So I am not aware of this. I think whatever happened, online education, new experiments should follow. The other day I heard a very interesting talk by a Harvard Business School professor on teaching case method to online. When if you follow it, I mean, there is nothing for some of you who are good teachers, there is nothing spectacular in this. It's nice to know from the experiences. Only thing is you will create some mechanisms where online also people become active. And one of the CEOs, very recently, he is locked down. He is the head of a company which almost about 2,000-3,000 people. And he got locked down like each one of us. And he was operating last 1.5 months through the web. And he had a very interesting thing to say. He says, as a result of several meetings I have had in the last 1.5 months, I met larger number of people. I met my customers. I met my suppliers. I met my employees in larger number I could never imagine in the last several years. Online, number one. And number two, I listened to people and I found they are listening to me. So interestingly, online has brought in some new life. I think if you have 60 students sitting in your class, in a situation like even in IIM, if you have 60 fellows, maybe you will break them into 30. On the screen, you can see 30 of them. You can very quickly, you see these nice faces. It's much more cognizable on a webinar if you have a good screen rather than in a classroom. Okay, you can see all 30 or 60 people on the screen. Whereas in a classroom, you have to keep turning your head this way, that way, and things of that kind. I suppose there are some new advantages you will get. We need to discover this. We need to adjust ourselves because we are in a profession where we are constantly learning and so on. So I only hope that these diktats don't come from Delhi by people who never taught in their life. If that happens, that is the worst kind of a thing to happen. Now, people like me coming back, I have a feeling some of us are retired and written off. So neither AICTE nor anyone.
You are written OF, written off, OF, single F.
No, see, even in IIMs, if you cross 70, 72, you are not eligible to be on the board. So I was on the board for 6 years. Even before I finished my term, I was told that no, your term is over because I think we are getting somebody. So let young people take care of this.
Yes, thank you, sir. So we have one question, Dr. Ramakant Kulkarni, Director Academics, Business School.
Professor Rao, thank you so much for your time. I sent a question in the morning. I hope, can you throw some light on HRD, how it is percolated in the small scale sector? Anything has happened on that, sir?
Yeah, you asked me that particular question. There is an agency called HUSYS, HUSYS, HUSYS. If you type it, this is a body that was formulated exclusively for HRD in small scale sector. There is one Dr. Reddy who operates from Hyderabad. I think you can go onto the website and see this. But whatever I know, number one, quite often small scale sector keeps asking me this question. Do I need to have a HR guy? I normally say that not necessary. You don't need a HR guy. As long as you have somebody, some people who can take charge of HR, let them read a few books. Nowadays, I would also hesitate asking them to read any book. I think you can acquire by talking to some people and so on. So first of all, they may not be required. But as far as legal aspects are concerned, you will need somebody because this country, our country is notorious for changing every few minutes the rules. And every city requires its rules. Very recently, I think HRD Network started a series of seminars. You know whom they are inviting? They are inviting legal experts and chartered accountants to educate small sector. The commonly asked question is, am I obliged to pay salaries? Now, for which they have no answer. But they give quote only, I think, what kind of laws, entities and Supreme Court, this and that, and things of that kind. So for small scale sector, this particular HR, which is legal oriented, you don't call it HR, but I think you need to have some experts, some specialists, either legally trained people and so on. But if you are talking of development, I think nowadays there are many coaches that have come out, many entrepreneurs. You don't need to be burdened by having a HRD manager to whom you have to pay fabulous sum. Unless you pay a good sum, you can't get a good fellow. And if you get a good fellow, then there is no guarantee. I think he and you are at the same wavelength. So I would strongly recommend exploring mechanisms like this. And I don't see any reason why, like many of you are from university, why don't you start services like this for small scale sector? And you say that, look, this is the kind of help that we can give, because all that they need is an alternative suggestion, somebody to listen, somebody who can gather information, disseminate information and guide them and so on. So I think that is the way forward. I don't think great HR people will be able to give always great solutions. But there are some professional bodies, like there is L&OD Roundtable. They started a service. They gathered a few experts and they said that these experts are available for any company which is facing trouble. Any HR manager who is not, who doesn't know how to deal with the post-COVID situation, please contact us. They are all in the WhatsApp groups and things of that nature. I think a lot is happening in the small and medium scale sector. But as far as the other issues, major issues are concerned, I think this is a big HR issue for small and medium scale sector. I think I always say the owners have to be HR managers. And if for some reason you believe that you don't have that knack of managing people among your employees, you find out somebody who is a people-oriented person, you designate that person, you are my people manager, because this particular function of carrying people with you, making them happy, giving their best is very important. And once again, I say it's a spiritual function. It deals with spirit. It's not a legal function. It's a spiritual function.
Thank you. So now I'd like to request Professor A.H. Chachdi, Professor Emeritus, Chetan Business School, to pass a concluding remarks.
Thank you. I hope this is of some use to you all.
Yeah. Yes, sir, speak up.
Sir, need to unmute.
Yeah.
Are you able to hear me?
Yeah.
Sir, it has been a wonderful session, and I must congratulate you on behalf of everyone and thank you also. But for you, no one else would have been able to give such an overview of HR in India. And we have been following your books, Behavioral Processes in Organizations, and your books on performance appraisal, which have been very useful to us because you gave a new insight that it is not for a particular purpose that you do appraisal. Appraisal is a part of the total development of the person. So I think you have given a new insight into the development of people. And only thing people fail to understand it because they are into immediate outcomes and not in the long-term outcomes. I think HR looks for outcomes which are lifetime related and not related to immediate results in the organizations. But your overview of the experience with Larsen & Toubro, as well as SBI, as well as your experience with BML, and all those interesting examples where you found people looking at HR in a very watered down manner, and they never understood the importance of HR, but only used the name HR as fashion. Anyway, I think your talk has given us a overview of how we have evolved over a period of time, both in the world as well as in India. The only thing the other people in the Western countries were not able to conceptualize and coin these words that you were able to do it. But you have been able to not only coin that word, but carry it further by developing methods of designing the HR systems and so on. And you have even given us questionnaires. In fact, I conducted a climate survey for NWKRTC with 21,000 workers. And we used your questionnaire models and for top level, middle level, and lower level, and submitted a climate survey report to them. So I think they are very practical, useful, and they have a very good insight into the processes. I think we have no words to thank you. All professionals in HR must join me in thanking you heartily for the kind of overview which you only could give, and your creation of the HRD network in India, and Academy of HRD that you have created, two things that you have done. I think they have done a human service to HRD function in India, and your network people and have made experiences so that they can share the experience, and you have created opportunities for them to consult each other. So all these aspects are notable, and your book contributions, your 17 odd books that you have quoted, and along with you, Uday Parikh. We have a great respect for Dr. Uday Parikh because he has done monumental work in the OD area, and both are related. OD cannot happen unless individual develops, and individual can develop only with HRD. So I think you have been complemental to each other. What he has done, you have carried the other part of it, and I think together you have created a great movement, and we are proud that we have been able to have you on our program and listen to you. And I think we'll go to your channel on the YouTube and listen to you more often, and we'll also get in touch with you whenever we need. And I think I know words beyond this, that I'm highly obliged, and my heart is full of contentment because we have heard it from the horse's mouth. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
Ramakant Kulkarni, Director Academics of Chetan Business School, to propose a vote of thanks.
Time to conclude the session formally, and Professor Chachadi has eased my job considerably by giving the overview. Nevertheless, Professor Rao, you have given a very lucid account of personal department, right to the MSME, corporate sector. It was wonderful to listen to you. I am a part of that era where personal department was working. I worked for 20 years in industry, the welfare department, the industrial relations, though I was in finance, but I was exposed to that. And from there, I also tracked the journey in a small way of my own. But your account of giving HR development in India has been wonderful. I think you made a very good combination of Professor Uday Parikh, though the age group, as you said, belong to two different generations, but it's a wonderful case that how two people can go together and work collaboratively and give something which is so unique to the field of academics and practice. I think we are benefited a lot by your last 1.5 hours of session, and we do look forward to these kind of interactions. And we have been conducting these kind of sessions on and on. Last 1 month plus, we have kept ourselves busy by inviting people. And thank you so much that people like you have obliged us to our call, and you have made yourself available. We had Professor Mukund Dixit once, and Khandwala, as I said, welcome. Now we are looking forward to A.K. Jain sir to come and talk to us. Definitely, I am on that job. Nevertheless, I think the talk has wonderful insights into the subject. There were a lot of students in the audience. I think they have got the first-hand knowledge how HR has been evolved in India. Your books indeed are very useful for all of us. On behalf of the institution, on behalf of all the participants, we at Chetan Business School thank you profusely for your time, and we do look forward to these kind of sessions. In audience and participant, there's wonderful people. I think we are very much obliged by their presence. A lot of students who participated with a lot of interest, nice questions were raised. We thank each and every participant. It's very difficult to name all of them. Nevertheless, but somebody like Mukund Dixit, and A.K. Jain sir, and so many others, Uday Lavate, Manoj Dolly, who have been our colleagues. Wonderful time we had. The director of my institution, he has been supporting a lot on all these occasions. Immediately after 2 days, I got one more series of talk that is by one Dr. Arundhati Kulkarni on intellectual property rights in India. She's going to speak to that. Then on 12th, we have got another program by Professor Mukund Dixit from case writing to case publication. So a couple of things are lined up from our side. We invite all the participants whom we are inviting. Please do take advantage of this kind of learning exercises that we have so much of time in this lockdown period. So definitely, there is a time on our side we can make it productively. To all my colleagues who have supported me in this, particularly Professor Huli, who really take the initiative of talking to you and making this session possible. And we have been in touch with you for the last 2 days continuously. I hope I have not disturbed you too much on the occasions by sending messages and emails. But sure, we are benefited Thanks each one of you, Professor Rao particularly, and once again we look forward to some session. Thank you so much on behalf of the institution. Once again, it's a very good time we have.